Welcome to this video on skills versus capacities in weight room activities. Today I will discuss the difference between skill and capacity limitations, using two very common weight room exercises as examples. A skill is the learned and trained ability to perform a movement correctly, including sensory motor skills and psychological skills, whereas capacity is possessing the physical and anatomical structures required to perform a skill correctly. The first athlete shows a decent structure in the ankle and knee alignment when viewed from the back. However, from the side, it is now visible that the torso leans very far forward and that he is not able to lower the thighs to parallel. He is also keeping the knees in line with the toes, which is potentially causing the forward lean. The athlete has received a verbal cue to keep the upper body more upright and to sit the hips lower. As a result, he is now sending the knees further forward, is able to lower down further, and achieves closer to parallel alignment between the torso and the shins. However, he is now adapting a new strategy and shows an increased thoracolumbar extension and a lack of core muscle activation. To assure that there are no structural limitations, hip range of motion can be tested with a modified Thomas test. Athlete 1 has no capacity limitations and good mobility around the hip joints. A core activation drill now teaches the athlete to maintain a braced core throughout movement. This modified tabletop drill is more movement specific to the squat than a regular plank position due to the body's alignment. The athlete is then advised to use the same core activation in an assisted squat, which he performs well. To further retrain proper alignment, the athlete performs a few squat repetitions with a dowel, maintaining a 3-point contact behind the head, between the shoulder blades and on the sacrum. There is a slight heel lift off in the first repetition. However, he is able to correct this, and after a few trials shows a quite good alignment and core activation throughout. Before the athlete is attempting the back squat again, I have applied a rigid tape to avoid extension throughout the mid and lower back and further enhance core stability. The athlete performed a few repetitions with the bar only, wearing the tape. We then removed the tape and it was safe to load the bar. We can see here the final attempts in the session of the athlete performing a back squat with acceptable alignment throughout. He was able to lower down the thighs to parallel, had a close to parallel alignment between the spine and the shin. The second athlete viewed from the side also seems unable to lower the thighs even near to parallel. His elbows appear in an awkward forward tilted position. From the back, however, it is now visible that he shifts his weight towards his left side, allowing for even less hip flexion at the right hip. I first want to investigate the elbow position seen in the first video. When performing a simple shoulder movement test, the athlete has good range of motion throughout, and this therefore should not present further problems. Next, hamstring flexibility is tested, and the athlete has a quite severe difference between the right and the left side. He is also experiencing a slight discomfort in the lower back region and the right glute when lifting the right leg. The difference also shows in a modified Thomas test. Athlete 2 is then asked to practice a squat motion from a tabletop position. As seen here, maintaining neutral spine is difficult for the athlete due to his very tight right hamstring and sensitivity in the lower back. A suitable exercise for hip mobility is the shin box, as demonstrated here. Because of his persistent lower back discomfort, this athlete was advised to reconsult with his physician. Once cleared, the exercises prescribed will include foam rolling of hamstring and glutes, hamstring stretches, static and PNF, piriformis stretches, hip mobility exercises such as the shin box, and lower back strength exercises, in example the Superman. Moving on to the third athlete, who is attempting a Romanian deadlift for the first time. In the side view, it is apparent that the athlete shows a rounded back and is not hinging from the hip. He is also overextending the cervical spine. To assure that the athlete has no capacity limitation, a quick hamstring flexibility test is performed, which he passes with acceptable flexibility on both sides. To teach the athlete the proper hip hinge motion required to perform a technically correct deadlift, the athlete practices with a dowel. Again, he is instructed to maintain a 3-point contact and to send the hips back whilst keeping the knees relaxed. Despite this feeling initially awkward to the athlete, he picks up the movement very quickly. After a few attempts with only the bar, athlete 3 is ready to load the bar and has learned to perform a very acceptable Romanian deadlift. In this picture, the correct alignment of the torso and the athlete's ability to maintain a neutral or natural spinal curve through the full movement can be seen. The fourth athlete acquired a hamstring tear whilst sprinting 6 months ago. Before her injury, squats and deadlifts were part of her workout routine. When attempting the deadlift, it is immediately apparent that she is avoiding to hinge at the hip to protect the hamstrings from being pulled into a stretch. Practicing with the dowel, the athlete cannot maintain the contact at the sacrum and continues to use her protective strategy. The active straight leg raise shows poor mobility on the right and even more so on the previously injured left side. After foam rolling of the hamstrings, glutes and quads, I am performing a PNF stretch on this athlete. A great exercise to retrain the hip hinge and to improve hamstring mobility is this variation of the more commonly used hip hinge against the wall. The athlete actively pushes the hips back into the band and also practices core stability and thoracic spine control. The hamstring band pull down is another hamstring rehab exercise suitable to retrain sprint motion and to regain hamstring flexibility. Athlete 4 is now advised to continue an exercise program that includes foam rolling of the hamstrings and glutes, hamstring stretches, static and PNF, piriformis stretches, hip mobility exercises such as the band hip hinge and the hamstring band pull down, and continue to practice the dowel deadlift whilst maintaining the 3-point contact. Now, why is it important to differentiate between a skill or a capacity limitation? As the videos showed, a skill issue can be fixed and coached within often just one session, whereas if a capacity limitation exists, the coach and athlete have to implement a long-term strategy to develop the athlete's capacity. This is important to avoid overuse and tissue stress injuries.